Welcome to OSHA Bloodborne Pathogen Training. OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, a government agency whose primary purpose is to keep the workplace safe. OSHA enforces the Bloodborne Pathogen Rule 29, which took effect July 1st, 1992. Published on December 6, 1991 in the Federal Register under Volume 56, Number 235, as Rule 29, CFR Part 1910-1030. Full context of the law is available through the Department of Labor or your local OSHA office, and is known as the Occupational Exposure to Bloodborne Pathogens Final Rule. In 2001, the Act was revised to include the Needle Stick Prevention Act. Signed into law November 6, 2001, was published in the Federal Register on January 18, 2001, and became effective in April of 2001. Full enforcement provisions began in July of 2001. Key provisions of the Needle Stick Prevention Act, it mandated that employers keep a sharps injury log and involve frontline employees in decisions about safety measures. Who's covered by our laws? All employees who could reasonably be anticipated as a result of performing their job duties to face contact with blood and other potentially infectious materials. What are these other potentially infectious materials? Well, if you're working in a hospital environment or acute care, you'll be familiar with some of the cerebral spinal fluid and so forth that might be generated through surgeries and procedures. Most of us, though, are just concerned about any bodily fluid that is visibly contaminated with blood, and all bodily fluids in situations where it's difficult or impossible to differentiate between the body fluids. Standard precautions must be followed at all times. Standard precautions state you should consider all bodily fluids to be potentially infectious and treat them as such. Why the law came about? HIV became a factor in the workplace, the virus that causes AIDS. There is no cure, there is no vaccine. It does not survive very long outside its host, but the results of exposure could be deadly. Hepatitis B was a major factor. 6,000 to 7,000 cases per year were the direct result of occupational exposure, people coming in contact on the job. 200 of those exposures would result in death, can cause cirrhosis of the liver and liver cancer. HBV has longevity and can last up to several days outside of its host, and it's 10,000 times more concentrated in the bloodstream than HIV. There is a vaccine, which is a series of 3 shots. Talking about microorganisms, things like bacteria and viruses, living things that can only be seen with a microscope. If we had 400 million of these lumped together, they'd be about the size of a single grain of sugar. It's important to realize that what we do on a daily basis is critical to the health of our facilities, and we can't clean just based on appearance. We have to understand that we can't see the things that we're removing. And they multiply rapidly. You started your shift and there was 1 bacteria, it was a penny. In 7 hours, it'd be $1 million. That's how quickly they multiply. OSHA's Rule 29 key points, we'll cover these individually. Exposure control plan. Must have a work practice controls in place. Provide protective equipment. Certain housekeeping they have to do. Vaccination if it's an acute care facility. There's also some record keeping and training that needs to be done. Rule 29 requires your employee to have a written exposure control plan which you have a right to see. The exposure control plan should include engineering controls, the equipment or machines that minimize risk, things like tongs, dustpan and brush, tools for handling regulated waste. What is regulated waste? Liquid or semi-liquid blood or other potentially infectious materials. Items contaminated with blood or other potentially infectious materials, and which would release these substances in a liquid or semi-liquid state if compressed. Items that are caked with dried blood or other potentially infectious material, and are capable of releasing these materials during handling. Contaminated sharps. Pathological, microbiological wastes containing blood or other potentially infectious materials. Regulated waste containers must be closable. They must be leak-proof. They must be labeled or color-coded. Shops containers must be easily accessible and convenient as possible, maintained upright at all times, closable, puncture resistance, leak-proof, labeled or color-coded. Your employer must provide you with appropriate personal protective equipment. They must provide annual training. Your employer must have work practice controls, which are the safest way to perform the needed tasks. Let's go through the procedures for the cleanup of a spill, and we'll cover these individually. We want to isolate the spill, put on our personal protective equipment, remove the gross matter, and dispose of it. Clean the area, disinfect the area, remove our PPE, and wash our hands. Isolate the spill. Close the room off. Do whatever you can so people don't traipse through it and pull it all over the building. Put on your PPE. Nope, not that. But how about gloves? Certainly in all cases. Goggles in most cases. Mask if necessary. Booties and gown if it's at that level. Remove the gross matter and dispose of it properly. At this point, we want to do this in the simplest way possible. Could be as simple as absorbing it with paper towels and throwing it into the red bag. Clean the area. We then want to clean the area with something we can either launder immediately or dispose of. So paper towels are another good choice. Disinfect the area. A disinfectant is a chemical liquid that destroys bacteria. Some guidelines for disinfectant use. They only work when they're wet, so it's important we put enough on, let it air dry. Dwell time is important. Heavy soil loads will decrease their effectiveness, so it can't fight through a lot of soil and kill germs at the same time. We never want to aerosolize chemicals. Step 6 would be to remove your PPE, your personal protective equipment. And the final step, always wash your hands. Single biggest factor in the stop of spreading of disease. 7 steps of proper hand washing. Turn on the water, wet your hands and wrists. Apply the soap. Hold your hands low so anything on your hands doesn't run down your arms, but rather runs down the drain. Use a 20-second wash with plenty of friction. Rinse it thoroughly. Dry your hands with a clean paper towel, and finally shut off the water using a paper towel. Some frequently asked questions. Are feminine hygiene products or diapers considered regulated waste? OSHA does not generally consider discarded feminine hygiene products or diapers to fall within the definition. How about urine and feces? Are these covered by the standard? OSHA does not consider urine or feces to be covered under the standard unless they are visibly contaminated with blood. Is vomit covered by the standard? Again, OSHA does not consider vomit to be covered under the standard unless it is visibly contaminated with blood. How are germs transmitted in the workplace? From puncture wounds from sharps, skin contact, broken skin, cuts on your hands, through mucous membranes, eyes, nose, mouth. Germs do not jump out and attack you. What is the best way to protect myself? Well, certainly wear your personal protective equipment. Wash your hands. Think and act safely. Thank you for your time and be safe.